welcome back to the Inspiration Collection Network. Today's video covers one of the most important shifts that your mind has to undergo in order to eventually master the art of painting. This video is from my Fundamental Drawing Secrets Master course, the program I created for those of you who want to master the secret techniques and methods that we use in academic drawing. Secret number 7, how to master painting with zero experience. And at its core, this skill is strongly connected to drawing. When starting off, we have a hard time understanding the big picture because we want to bring out the little bits of information that make up the full image. And this becomes very complicated when we try to figure out how to use values and color and how to connect them to describe reality correctly. And this begins with recognizing shadow shapes and light shapes. If you are able to separate both of these correctly, you create a solid base on which to construct the rest of the drawing or painting. The full intricacy of the values and colors can only exist once you have created a base where you clearly capture the light shapes and the shadow shapes. If you get in the habit of doing this, it'll make the entire process a lot quicker, and it'll make describing the three-dimensional form a lot easier. Because how your mind understands the three-dimensional form on a flat surface depends directly on the lighting. The shadows and the values explain the form, and you don't need complicated variations of the values. You simply need to clearly separate the light area from the shadow area. This sets up the direction of the light source and begins to solidify the illusion of three-dimensional form on a flat surface. One of my own personal habits is that I paint on a black or toned canvas, and this helps me to capture an idea or composition within 20 to 30 minutes because it simplifies it into just bringing out the light shapes to solidify the form. This clip is from the portrait construction lesson in my 10-day Fundamental Drawing Secrets Master course, where I teach the most important methods and techniques that artists use to capture reality for artists of all levels. I'll include a link in the description below. So as you can see, I use white pencil on black canvas to sketch out the idea that I'm working with. I personally find it a lot easier to make corrections this way, and I can create the form by bringing out the solid light shapes that build up the figure. And this is actually an exercise that I suggest to all the artists that want to master painting, because it helps you see mapping the figure in a new way. We are so used to working the shadows into a white background that the moment you reverse this, you allow your mind to understand a different part of the construction where you're building up rather than down. You see, the darker you go, the deeper the image gets, and the lighter you go, the more superficial it becomes. So when you're adding just the light shapes, you can build the three-dimensional form with just a couple of brushstrokes. This simplification actually helps you to fully render the image a lot quicker because you're focusing on finding the shapes. This is actually one of the techniques that I use to paint upside down during some of my performances. It mostly comes down to high contrast and focusing on the shapes. And a lot of this comes down to your reference. So when you're choosing a reference when you're starting off learning to draw, you got to make sure that the lighting actually helps you to understand the form. Higher contrast is usually better when you're starting off because you can easily understand the light and shadow shapes and how they explain the form. And this is where the idea of a blocking comes in. And by using this skill, you can develop the ability to do the same thing, but using both the shadow shapes and the light shapes to slowly construct the figure from a very simplified idea to a very finalized and developed drawing. In the case of this reference, we have a very clear shadow shape, but even in the light area, we're dealing with both light shapes and the mid-tone as you get a soft transition into the shadow area. You want to get really good at understanding the nuances between these values and what they mean about the three-dimensional form you are depicting. A lot of times, the issues that you have with your drawings have a lot to do with your reference images. You want to make sure that your reference images don't have ambiguous or confusing lighting. Like this, where you can't really see clear separation between light shapes and shadow shapes. And unfortunately, when you get commissions, a lot of times they'll send you photos that do not have proper lighting. And personally, I've had to make up the lighting in a lot of the commissions that I've created. I did this with one of my own works. I love the reference photo and I love the way the painting came out, but I decided to redo the entire painting using a different reference photo simply because I preferred the angle and the expression. But I used the light source of the original reference as I imagined it would have applied in this new reference. And notice that I started with mapping out the shadow shapes, then creating the light shapes, and then mapping out the form and the details of the painting. And one of the most important parts of the process is the fact that there's light shapes and shadow shapes, and they are very clearly separated. This is the mental shift that I mentioned at the beginning. Every drawing or painting has to undergo a stage where the light and shadow areas are clearly separated so that you can then come back in and add the details that bring your work of art to life. You have to treasure the simplicity before this complex detail comes into play. We know this as the first layer or the underpainting, and also as the ugly stage. And you have to fall in love with the ugly stage because this is the first part of the construction of three-dimensional form. You can't let the ugly stage stop you because then you'll never discover the refined masterpiece at the end. So if you want to learn to paint, you have to focus on simplifying the image using these shapes. Before you even think about the colors, you have to identify and separate the shadow shapes from the light shapes. And of course, understand how they come together to sculpt the reality we see. And this works regardless of how you're painting, whether you're painting white on black or black on white. I want you to try to make a priority of looking for these shapes. Don't rush into trying to find all the details. Just clearly separate the lights and the shadows. And once you have separated them and created a base to work on, that's when you come back in to what we call the refining stage. And you'll notice in this particular image just how much I add to the refining stage as I progress through the painting. But I only did this once I had set up both the light and the shadow areas separately. So if you ever want to master the art of painting, you have to first master the art of drawing. And this is what this exercise is about. It connects both drawing and painting. As you bring the light shapes out, it feels like you're revealing a hidden sculpture, and you can even vary the intensity of the tone you're using, similar to when you're drawing with graphite. And it rests on how could you become at simplifying the lights and the shadows, and building on the simplicity. You're always going to hit that ugly stage, but in the end, if you trust in the process, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with that being said, if you haven't already, I invite you to sign up for the 10-day Fundamental Drawing Secrets Master Course, the program I designed specifically for those of you who believe that you have to be born talented. Drawing is a science, and once you understand it, you can create anything that you can imagine. I truly believe that drawing is for everyone. And I put my life's work into this course to give you all the resources that you need to discover the artist inside you. Thank you all for being here and supporting what I do. Make sure to subscribe to become part of the journey and watch all the new upcoming videos. Give this video a like, and in the comments, let me know any specific questions that you have that you would like me to answer. Stay creative, keep looking for yourself, and I will see you in the next video.